9 p.m. Yay! Let me adjust this light because it's a bit too bright. Whee! Doesn't that look better? Yes, it does. Oh yeah, look at that. It's getting better each time. So I want to thank you for being on the call. Let me see if everything is working properly because I don't see it quite yet. But I want to say my name is Chad Allen, and I am 41 years old. I have a beautiful wife and daughter, and together we are happily married. We've been happily married for a good year already, and it's going. We are just a few months after our first anniversary. So let's see here, August, September, or September, October, November. 3 months past our first year. So we are super duper excited. So tonight's call, we are going to be discussing how do you know that you have a good marriage, like your marriage, like how everything's on the right track, etc. And there are many ways, but actually, but a lot of it, to be honest with you, is your own perception about things, and how you see certain things in your life, and how from that we can adjust our perception in order to have uh, in order to be able to really begin to have a marriage that is good, and especially with our own selves and also in the eyes of God. And we all know, about, what the Bible says about marriage, what the Bible says about treating your wife, and how you are supposed to treat each other, etc. And those are all very, very important, and we all know these things. But yet sometimes what happens is we begin to get into in our own way. We, because of our sinful ways at times, we will sometimes become too proud of who we are, of what we do, of what we are, and then we begin to look only at ourselves, or we begin to look only at what we want instead of looking at what the other person wants. So we begin to forget about the other person and others, instead what we do is we only look at ourselves and what we want and how we want it, because it's us, it's me. If you don't please me, then you are bad. If you don't do what I want, then you are bad. That kind of thing. So we have to really begin to think beyond all of that, because really marriage is a give, right? You heard the adage of give and take, or each one must give 50%. It's marriage is 50-50, but it's not 50-50. It's 100 on 100, right? Each person involved has to give 100%. And many times you gotta give more than 100%, and many times you have to go beyond what is comfortable to you, because that's what's important. So I know it's a touchy subject, for some people, but it's a good subject for those who are really looking to find ways to get their marriage looking better. So I want to thank all those for being on the call. And Sharon, thank you for being on the call. And I hope you're having a wonderful night. If you want to say hi, and I will certainly say hi back to you. If I don't do it at the beginning, I will certainly do it at the end or after the call. And if you have any tips that you would like to share, please share those. And if I see them, I will certainly read them out to all of those who are there. Unless you don't want to, then that's okay also. So, what do I mean by how do you know that your marriage is on the right track or not? And I think a lot of it has to do with your own, it's how you're feeling at that very moment. Is marriage a feeling? Yeah, it's a feeling, but it's also a factual type thing as well, right? You know, we feel a connection to the other person. You know, we feel that love for the other person. We feel anger toward that person. We feel certain things, but we also have a contractual agreement with the other person, right? And sometimes in that contractual agreement that we have before God and before the government, we tend to forget about what our vows are. We forget that we will be there thick and thin. We forget that we'll be there through sickness and through wealth or for health. We forget that we are that the one that we married is not the most perfect person in the world, because if they were, yeah, they probably would not be here, right? So we forget about all those things, and we began to think of we become selfish in our own right, and we began to have a little bit of self-righteousness within ourselves, and we began to look at the things that we only want. So when a marriage is not on track, it's because we began to see things in our own eyes instead of through the lens of the other person, or to see things in a broader perspective. So when we began to become selfish within ourselves, we began to see what's going on, because we start to live with the other person for every single day, and then these are little nuances that really gets us irritated. You know, like oh, you kept the toilet seat up. Oh, you peed on the seat. You should clean it up. Oh, you didn't take the trash out. Oh, you did not put the dishes away. Oh, you didn't do this. Oh, you didn't do that. And the next thing you know, those little things began to wreak havoc on your marriage, and you began to get agitated, irritated, and the next thing you know, you begin to say, my marriage is not doing so well because I cannot do anything right, or my husband or my wife is such they, everything I ask them to do, they don't want to do because they are this or that, and instead of being cheerful, like at the very beginning of your marriage, right? You're looking at you say, wow, you're so lovey-dovey, nothing that the person does, little nuances are not really a big issue, because you're willing to overlook it, right? You overlook these things, but yet as the marriage goes on, we begin to not overlook those things, and we begin to allow those little things to get to us and to damage our relationship with the spouse that we've married. So you have to ask yourself, is it really the situation that's dictating how you love that person, or dictating how healthy your marriage is at that very moment? Or is it really your own personal perception about things, your own personal problem areas that you see as being a problem because it gets really irritating to you? And it's so these are like things that you have to look at. And also what tends to happen in any marriage that begins to not be so good, is that you begin to lose your communication skills with one another. Instead of really paying attention to that person, instead of really trying to listen and ask them, it's like, what do you like? If the other person is upset, and they're being upset with you, and then what happens is, because of all these little things that happened in the past, like the dishes, you're irritated about something because the floor wasn't swept, or the bed wasn't made, or whatever it is, all those little things, and it begins to build up inside you, right? And the next thing you know, you're upset at the person, and then you say something irrational, you say something that's mean, and the person, because they are not ready for that, or they're not able uh, to not react in such a way that will get them, like instead of them being listening in and not reacting, they react right away. And the next thing you know, you are left with a very big argument over nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so you have to ask yourself, is arguing over a dirty dish or a toilet not being down or the bed not being made, is it really worth destroying the relationship that you have with your spouse? And the quick answer to that is definitely no, it's not really worth it. And so you have to be able to look at what helped you get married to that person at the very beginning. And you have to continue to remember that. You got to continue to remember the vows that you made with your significant other. Because why? If you don't, then those things will begin to wreak havoc. Let me ask you something. Okay, ladies and guys, of course, also. And I'm gonna get a little sexual here, so just but I'm gonna say it, okay? Ladies, if you ain't giving it up to your husband, guess what? Eventually your husband begins to think there's something wrong. They begin to think that there's that you don't like them. They begin to get irritated. They begin to not feel loved anymore. And then what happens? They find it somewhere else because you're not willing to give it up. You're not willing to give it sexually, right? It's the truth, guys. You women, it's when you guys, it's always below, and for the women, it's always guys. It's always the heart and mind. If you want to get more sex out of your wife, you need to be a good listener. You need to be a good you have to be heartfelt with them, and you have to be able to give them the 4 A's, right? Because when you are thoughtful, when you are really listening to them, and being thoughtful is also being like you're asking them how their day is. You're asking them what is wrong if they're upset. You're not getting upset with them because, guys, you are the leader of your family. You're the one that sets the example, right? And when you are being a hellion, then you're not setting the example for your family. When you are quickly getting angry, then you have set the stage for your whole family to be angry. Because why? Women, guys, reciprocate what they receive. So if they are reciprocating what they receive, what do you expect when you are giving them something that they don't, they feel like they're being disrespected, that they feel like that they're not being loved? Well, obviously you're going to get how they're going to reciprocate that back is to make you feel less important, make you feel less loved as well. So it's a two-way street. So for the guys, when you're feeling like you are being not pay attention to, when you start beginning to feel disrespected by your spouse, etc., what's the first thing that we do? We tend to go to do a hobby. We watch more TV. We watch games. We go. We might go fix a car. We might go out and drive. We might go out and do whatever. It's because we are typically performance based, and therefore, when we are feeling like we are not being loved, we try to find that love somewhere else by going out and doing that particular thing. And for women, when they begin to feel very unloved, they feel disrespected, what's the first thing that they do? They talk, and they want to vent out. So if your wife or even girlfriend, if your wife is venting out on you, just shut up and listen. Shut up and listen and just take it. And because once they vent, they're okay. They're really okay. You know, but it's giving that level of attention to them that makes it really important. So you know that you have a good marriage, and a marriage that is on the right track is when the two is able to sit down and really talk to one another instead of always shouting. That there's a mutual respect for one another. That they are both able to do the things that are necessary to have a good marriage. They work together, as a team. And even if one feels like they are not getting the help they need, they are still able to press forward. Instead of if one is not helping the other, instead of yelling and instead of being accusing the other person, you ask them politely. You go to them and say, hey, I really would like for more help here. So these are certain things that you can do to have a much happier marriage in your life. And so it's really, when it comes down to it, it's really about your behavior, but it's also about your willingness to give 100%, and sometimes more than 100% to the other person. And when you're able to do that, then you will see great things begin to happen in your marriage. And even if the other person is not fully there, you pray for them. You continue to do the things that you did before you got married. Just because you're having a bad marriage, or you're having a marriage that you're not happy with, later in your life, just because you're not being happy, does not give you the right to not go out, to not try to make your marriage better. Instead of giving up, what can you do to win back that love that you had? Because the love is always there. I don't care what anybody says. Oh, I don't love you more. No, that's a complete lie. The love is still there. Otherwise, they would not have married. You would not have been married with one another. But you really have to find a renewance of that. And a lot of times it comes down to attention. It comes down to affirmation. It really comes down to those few things. There's a couple more. I just can't think of the other two A's at the moment. But it really comes down to it. And ladies are really need that affirmation, that attention from their guys. They need that. And when guys are not giving it to them, they feel unloved. When guys are not getting what they want, they feel unloved. It's just the way it is. So it's because we both, when it comes down to it, we have selfish intentions within ourselves. And it's okay. It's okay, because we all have needs, right? And when those needs are not being met, then there's a level of unhappiness that begins to happen. So in a marriage, we are to give and give, because that's what we do. And when we are not being selfish within ourselves, if we are refusing certain things, then the marriage is not gonna be totally there. You know what I mean? But so we have to be able to do that. So anyway, I want to say thank you for being on the call. Sheila Marie and Gino, thank you for being on the call. Thank you, Ronald, for being on the call. And thank you for everyone who has attended. I really appreciate it. And if you got great value out of this, share the video. If you have any comments that you would like to make, please message below, and I'll certainly message back to you. And so I want to thank you so much, and you guys have a wonderful, wonderful night. We will talk to you tomorrow. All right, take care. Bye-bye.